Okay, well, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us today for Bloomerang Academy's intermediate class on how you can be a gift entry guru. We're going to be focusing today on some of those, the less typical gifts that you don't get every day, but you get them often enough, and there's a little bit of extra steps involved in things like in-kind donations and soft credits and gifts of stock. So that's what we're going to be focusing on. So again, our agenda today, we're not going to go very deep into pledges. I'm only going to demonstrate a pledge for the purpose of showing how a pledge differs from what we call recurring donations in Bloomerang. There is, in fact, a whole separate Bloomerang class all devoted to pledges. So then we're going to talk about recurring donations, in-kind donations. We're going to talk about memorial and tribute donations, soft credits, which is the terminology that we use to talk about recording a gift from a third party that one of your donors made possible. For instance, a United Way gift or a gift through their a family foundation or a donor-advised fund at the community foundation, things like that. We'll talk about how to enter gifts of stock, and finally we're going to have some tips on the type of information that you can keep in Bloomerang for knowing about planned gifts, estate gifts, wills, things that are so you know that somebody has included you in their estate planning, even if the money's not going to be in, hopefully for a while yet. So with that, let's go ahead and close out of my slides and just jump right into Bloomerang. This is my donor database with where I test things out and input real and imaginary people. All the donations are imaginary. So as I mentioned, everything we're going to be doing today is going to be a manual one-on-one entry process. Typically when you're doing, maybe you, with a standard donation, you might have a process by which you enter them into an Excel spreadsheet and then use a mass import process. With one minor exception today, we're talking about things that kind of need to be gone over, with unique solutions. And so these are all going to be entered manually. And you enter a gift manually by first finding the record of the individual donor. So I want to start by talking about the difference between a pledge and a recurring donation. So, in all of my examples today, I just watched the HBO movie of the 12-year reunion of the cast of Deadwood, and so we're going to be using some imaginary examples today with our characters from Deadwood, South Dakota in the 1870s. So, let's start by saying, we'll start with the evil villain who's going to make a pledge, and we'll demonstrate how, just for understanding the difference between a pledge and a recurring donation. A pledge, if we would go to the constituent record, we would search to see if somebody is already in there. If they're not, then you create a new one. But always search first. I think everybody I'm using today is already in here. But always search first so you don't create a duplicate. We'll open up George's record. So if you just got a check from him today, obviously you would enter that as a new donation. But since this is a pledge, still go to the same place, the upper right-hand corner, where we enter all new timeline activities, including interactions and tasks and things. But here we're going to be actually entering a pledge. So a pledge in Bloomerang, nonprofit fundraising in general, is anytime somebody makes a commitment to give you a certain amount of money by some date in the future. And that can be as simple as a one-time pledge that says, look, I'm going to give you $1,000 as part of my year-end giving. In which case you enter the total amount of the gift. You enter what fund it goes into. Typically, a pledge is a large enough amount that it's not going to be auto-paid. Sometimes some people will give you a credit card number and say, hey, charge my credit card on December 25th. Typically not. Typically with a pledge, we're talking about a larger sum of money, especially if it's going to be in multiple installments. They want to decide how they're going to give it to you. And so you're going to say no auto payment. This maybe have been a personal solicitation, and maybe it's part of my capital campaign. It's going Bloomerang. All pledges in Bloomerang are going to default to the idea that they're going to be paid in a year in monthly installments. In the case I've given you here, where we've got somebody saying, I'm going to give you $1,000 as part of my year-end giving, then we're going to change the first installment date from a month to today to, let's say, 12/20/2019. And the frequency is going to be yearly. We don't have a value there that's one time, so yearly works out. But as soon as you click yearly, then your installment amount, Bloomerang is going to automatically change it to $1,000. And so part of your process, and you'll go dig into this more deeply when you take Diana's class, is setting up a report for doing monthly pledge reminders of every pledge that has a installment date due in the coming month. That's a pledge. Now, it might have been a larger amount. It might have been 5 years. So maybe what he's telling us is, I'm going to give you $2,000 a year for each of the 5 years. And Bloomerang, make sure the math is right. You'll notice there when I temporarily had the wrong number in there, it's giving me a warning that says, no, my installment can't be larger than the amount. So 5 $2,000 payments, but the amount is not the amount of the payment. The amount is the total amount of the commitment. And that's what we want to say about pledges. Just as an understanding, so we can, I'll save this, and say, let's see the distinction between pledge and recurring donation. In Bloomerang, we want you to use recurring donation to refer to those types of ongoing commitments where a donor is giving you a credit card number or a bank account number and say, charge my credit card this amount, $30 a month, every month, for as long, indefinitely, until such time as I change my mind and hopefully increase that gift. So essentially, in that case, let's say we're going to look up Dan Doherty, Al Swearingen's handy right-hand man. We'll open up Dan's record. Yeah, so Dan is, since he's not a U.S. senator, he's just kind of a hitman. He's more likely to be a $25 a month donor than a $10,000 pledger. So what he might do, now typically, once you're set up in Bloomerang, most of your recurring donations are actually going to be made online. People are going to go to your website, they're going to use your online giving form, they're going to enter their credit card securely there, and they're just going to show up in your reporting. You're not very often going to actually be creating one, but you will frequently be opening one up and editing it. So let's say that this was, this is old school. Back in 1876, Dan Doherty didn't have any problem with picking up the, not even a telephone there, and saying, here's my credit card number, just start using this credit card for my monthly transaction. So here you go to the upper right-hand corner, and it's not donation, it's not pledge, it's a new recurring donation. Now here what you do know is you know that the monthly amount he wants to give, there isn't a total amount as there would be with a pledge, because this is open-ended. So it's going to start giving $25 a month. And typically, you've got your own understanding that unless you've asked for something specific about this, typically your monthly givers, your monthly givers are typically going to be into your unrestricted, which is in my organization, that's what I call my annual campaign. Campaigns and appeals are not required, but I think you'll find it useful to have. And so, maybe once again, this was a result of this was an unsolicited gift. He just while he was pouring me a shot of whiskey, he just told me he was going to do this. He's going to give me a credit card number, and as soon as you click on credit card, then it's going to ask you which credit card processor you're using. You've got to have set up either with Authorize.net or Stripe, and here's where you would type in the card number. The security code on the back, the expiration date. And it is going to, unless you tell it otherwise, it's going to process immediately. And then on the 20th of every month, unless maybe he wants to do it weekly or maybe quarterly. You can make these changes, but the default frequency is going to be monthly. And there is no end date. Unless he tells you at the outset, I'm going to do this for the rest of the year, and then let's talk next year. Maybe next year I can do something different. And I don't want this going on indefinitely. In that case, maybe you will at this point put an end date of 12/31/2019, and then it's just going to run. It's just going to run on the sequence. On the quarterly sequence between now and then. Similarly, if somebody has already is already set up an online gift, and they're giving on a quarterly or on a weekly or a monthly basis, whatever, and they call you up and say they'd like to change it, they'd like to end it for whatever reason. How do you do that? You go to their record, you go to the record that we've just saved. So we'll see. Having saved this, I've already got the schedule on the timeline, and we've already processed the first donation. And so if Dan were to come back later and say he wanted to end it, I would go to the original schedule, or, if the original schedule was years ago and it's way down off the bottom of the page, you should go to any one of the donation payments. Once you've opened the payment, at the top of the right-hand column, you've got a link to the schedule itself, and here's where you've got the chance to put in that end date. So, Dan changes his mind tomorrow and says he wants to stop this tomorrow. We'll just get that in, type that in there, and it will never process again. So that's recurring donations. The other thing I'd like to talk about while we're talking about recurring donations is, and I don't have an example of this, but you hopefully have seen if you've got them. Periodically, you will get a bright red disc up here by the bell that tells you that you have a notification, and frequently that notification will say that you've got a failed credit card or more. When you get that, just click on that disc and you'll get a report of every, since the last time. And typically it's going to be the first time, until you resolve it, it's going to continue to be there. And it's going to say that this credit card or these credit cards failed the last time we tried them. Sometimes it will tell you, depending on what information your donor's bank shares with us, sometimes that it was going to say that the card expired. When a card expired, your donor probably doesn't even realize it yet, or they're going to realize it pretty quickly. I apologize if we had a little blip there. It looks like we're connected again. So essentially, talking about the fact that from time to time, you'll get the bright red alert button up here by the notifications that says you've got credit cards that have failed. Click on that. You'll get a list of who those donors are. You click on each one of those. It will take you directly to the record, the gift that failed. It will tell you, it may tell you that it failed because the credit card expired. you used to have to run a report. Of course, you have to run a report in Bloomerang and try to anticipate once a month. Show me every credit card in my system that has an expiration date of this month. Now, what we do now is we just kind of let you know when it happens. If it's an expired card, it's really common. It's a courtesy even, just to send that donor an email. Or pick up the phone and call them and say, hey, we really appreciate your support. I don't know, were you aware of the fact that the card you've been using has expired? Would you like to, give us a new card number so we can get you keep your gift processing on your desired schedule? If you're doing it by email, it's really a good idea to just put a link to your donation page into the email, so they don't even have to. They can just follow it. They can go straight to your secure page, re-enter a new card number. They don't have to go through any awkwardness that some people may have these days about, reading their card number over the telephone. Used to be the only way to use a card remotely. Now everybody's used to doing it online. And you just don't find people even doing that so much anymore. So that's recurring donation payments. Let's move from there and talk a little bit now about in-kind donations. So, for instance, say that we just got a gift of a whole bunch of prospecting equipment from the hardware store of Bullock and Starr. So let's say it was a personal gift from Seth Bullock, though. So let's go to Seth's record. Open it up. Now, an in-kind donation is, in fact, just a new donation. It doesn't have its own button or anything. Amount, you always want, and this is our recommendation in Bloomerang. Some people do it a different way, and it's certainly not unethical or immoral or illegal to do it a different way. It's just not what we recommend as best practice. We recommend putting an amount of 0. And then for all of your in-kind gifts. You may want to have a separate fund for your in-kind gifts. I always just put mine into, for instance, these, some of this, if I was having a capital campaign, a lot of my gifts might be in-kind gifts to my building fund as part of my capital campaign. Down to method, here's where you click in-kind. And as soon as you click in-kind, new windows open up, including type, which you choose were these goods or services. These were goods. And here's fair market value. Here's where, if you want to keep a record for your internal purposes of a rough estimate of what this gift was worth, and then if Sheriff Bullock is giving us hardware out of his store, he's probably got a pretty good idea. He can walk right into the store and show you this the price tags on the other things like it in there. So it may be pretty easy to understand that this was a $100 fair market value amount. The point to know is that it's the donor's responsibility to tell you that. It's not your responsibility to give them a tax receipt with a dollar amount on it. This is actually another class we don't get. This is just how to enter the gifts. There's also a gift on a class on acknowledgments called saying thank you quickly and well, and we talk about how to set up your thank you letters for in-kind contributions. The point is your thank you to them for an in-kind contribution is just confirming that you received the gift. It's their responsibility to provide documentation to the IRS that proves it's what they're claiming on. And for a thing like a gift of hardware, if somebody's giving you a gift certificate for you to auction off at your silent auction at your gala, it's not uncommon to just for them to tell you what the amount is and just plug it in there. But if they were making a gift of, so we're talking about Deadwood here, if somebody was actually giving you a stake, 10 acres of land to go prospecting on, that's where they get in the situation. They might think that that land is worth $100,000, but if you told them it was worth $200,000, wouldn't that be a nice tax write-off for them? Well, you don't want to. You're not playing that game. So that's why the fair market value is the donor's responsibility. And here's then under descriptions where you might say. Prospecting equipment. Try to write this description down using terminology that it later on would insert into a letter. So if you got your letter in your head, thank you for your in-kind gift of, and these words pop right into and finish that sentence. As opposed to putting some words in here that would make that sentence in that letter read funny. So just think in terms of having your thank you letter in your mind, so the words that you put in description tell you the information you need, but make it easy for the letter to be written. Now, if you want to go into more detail than that, that's where you go down to the notes, and you could say 2 shovels, 1 sandbox, 3 buckets, 2 pans, that sort of stuff. And then you'd save it. And you will see then on the timeline, the green logo means it's a gift, and it's a donation with an amount of 0. If you've got a gift with an amount of 0 on your timeline, you can pretty well tell that it is a in-kind donation. So, similarly, people can make in-kind donations of services. It works the same way. If Seth's partner was going to volunteer, make an in-kind donation of his services as the auctioneer, you're not having a silent auction, you're having a wild and woolly Wild West live auction. And once again, the amount he's going, and Sol does this for a living, but he's not going to charge you for it. The amount of his gift is 0. The fund here, this is part of, this is a fundraiser for your building fund. So it's part of your capital campaign. The method is in kind, and the only difference here is type is goods, and description is, how would that sentence read? Thank you for your in-kind donation of your services as auctioneer. And then down here you could put in further notes about how, what time you got there, just whatever else you wanted, 3 hours. The other types of things. And here is especially where it's really, you're going to be providing Sol with a thank you letter that's his documentation that he made the gift. Now, really, if he wants to say that he normally charges $1,500 for this service, that's up to him. And frankly, it's not like most people ever get audited for these types of things, but the right way to go about it is to put that responsibility in the donors. Oops, yeah. I'm sorry, I just clicked on the wrong thing there. This is services and not goods. Yeah, absolutely. So Melissa, and Melissa's question, so if you were a food pantry, you absolutely might just want to put under description, you could just say food or groceries, or get a little bit, a little bit more detailed. And then in the notes, you could say, for instance, you might want your sentence to say, "Thank you for your donation of 2 cases of canned goods and 40 pounds of meat." You could get into that level of description. And then down under note, you could say beans, green beans, stewed tomatoes, tuna, and 41-pound packages of, if you want this information in Bloomerang, I would use description to be as limited as possible for it to make sense in your thank you letter, and the detail under note. And in fact, what you may want to do, if you're doing a food pantry, is you may want to create a custom. Yeah, Melissa's question. We are anticipating each other here. Perfect. Where you would create a custom transaction field for. I've got a bunch of transaction fields related to events. I'd put this down under miscellaneous. A new field for pounds of food. The type of information that goes there is a number that you'll be entering manually. But then Bloomerang knows how to run a report where you can add a column for pounds of food, and it's going to strike that total for you, and you don't have to go through and read and total those, the numbers up by looking them up one at a time. Where the number is embedded into a note. All right, let's move on to memorial and tribute donations. So typically, this is where when you get a donation from somebody, either in honor of somebody who's recently retired or in memory of somebody who's recently deceased. And this is a situation where before you go to the donor's record, you first want to make sure that that person is entered into Bloomerang as a tribute recipient. So, spoiler alert here. I think people probably know this because the town of Deadwood, the real live town of Deadwood, advertises its fact that Wild Bill Hickok is buried there. So I'm not surprising anybody to let you know that Wild Bill Hickok is going to die. So we're going to get a gift today from Calamity Jane Cannery in Wild Bill Hickok's memory. First thing you're going to do is you're going to go to Settings, and then you're going to go to Tributes. The first thing we'll do is we'll look and see, is Wild Bill Hickok already in our database as a tribute recipient? He's not. So we'll go up here to the upper right-hand corner and create a new tribute. Can be in honor of. Unfortunately, this is in memory of. And at this point, this is all you really need. If you want to use Bloomerang later on to generate letters to notificants, notificants are the people who will be, so it's, typically it's the surviving spouse or a child. In this case, maybe Bill's good friend Actually, they just became friends, but they really hit it off with each other. So maybe Seth Bullock is going to be the person that later on you want to record as. Now, for this to work, once again, obviously the person has to be in Bloomerang. So frequently people you don't even follow this step. You're not gonna generate. You're at one time. You're going to you're going to create a letter in Word addressed to the widow of somebody who's deceased and list all the gifts that were received. Judy, I'm going to be sending out notes from this tomorrow or Monday with a link to the recording. So keep an eye out for that. So as I was saying, you may not even want to use Bloomerang for your notificants. But if you do, you've got, obviously the person has to be a constituent in Bloomerang with an address in Bloomerang. And then if you do, then we've got in the letters class, a mechanism in place that you can not only thank Calamity Jane for making the donation, but you can also later on send Seth Bullock a letter that says, thought you would like to know that the following gifts have been received in memory of your good friend, Wild Bill Hickok. So now that we've added Wild Bill, did I get him? Now that I've added him, yeah, he's in there. Okay, now we'll go to the record of Calamity Jane, real name Jane Cannery. And we'll go to the upper right-hand corner, and this is just a donation for the purposes of gift entry. The date is today. The amount is $100. You may want, now typically most organizations consider memorial contributions to be unrestricted unless you've got a policy in place. Some organizations actually, since typically you're never going to get a gift again in for this particular person, it's not a gift you're going to be able to renew. Some people will put those gifts into their endowment. Or they say all of our memorial contributions are always going to go to a scholarship fund or a library fund or something. Typically, this is not, unless the donor is saying, unless the donor says, I want to make this gift in memory of Bill and I want it used for, then that's where you would select a fund other than unrestricted. Most organizations just consider memorial contributions to just be one of the things that happen and become part of your annual campaign. You may want to have your own appeal for it. Not that it's an appeal that you can actively go out and generate, but just as a way of knowing, being able to say in a report what activity generated what, and be able to say, well, goodness gracious, when you count them all up, our memorial contributions was a big source of revenue for us this year. So here then you'd say whether it was a check, credit card, cash. If it's a check, you got the option of putting in a check number, but it's not required. And then on the right-hand side is where we go and add the tribute. So it is a tribute gift. We'll click the plus. I am sorry for I'm going to need to do a little test, to do a little bit of testing of my wireless in this room. Okay, so let's move on now to soft credits. Soft credits is is how we recommend that you keep track of gifts that come to you from a third party through the actions of another one of your donors. We recommend that you use soft credits for things like matching gifts from corporations, or gifts that people have set up through their own private charities, like their family foundations, or their donor-advised fund at the community foundation. So, for instance, today I got a $500 gift in the mail from the Gym Saloon. Now, fortunately, the note, yeah, and United Way is actually going to be my next demonstration, Melissa. You and I are actually on the very same wavelength today. Gym Saloon, I'm doing as a matching gift from an employer. Fortunately, the check came with a check. It told me on the check stub that this $500 gift that I'm going to enter is, in fact, a match of a gift that I got from Al Swearingen last month. So I'm going to open it as a new donation. The gift is from the gym. It's not from Al himself, although these things are fungible, as they would say. So it's going to be part of my unrestricted efforts to meet my annual campaign goal today, and I actually have matching gifts as an appeal. And it's a cash gift, but here's where I would go. Oh, let's check. It could be cash. They don't do a lot of cash business in Deadwood. But now, so here's now having entered all of that information at the top of the next page is where I go, and I click on soft credits, and I look for the person who is already in my database. And I make Al the soft credit recipient of this gift. What this does is, for the purposes, now as soon as I save this gift, we'll see that the Gym Saloon has a gift on its timeline, a $500 donation. If we go look up Al, I think I've got it in here twice and it's misspelled once. It's insisting on pointing me to the Grace Hearing Center. Al Swearingen. Now we'll see on his timeline, there's the logo for a gift, but it says it's a soft credit. When generating thank you letters, you're going to give a $500 gift, a thank you for $500 gift to the gym, and then you don't want to send Al the same letter because he actually, this gift was from the company. The company deserves the tax credit, not Al, but you probably want a different letter filtered for all gifts where the type of gift is soft credit. Where the language would say, "Dear Al, we have received the gift of $500 from the Gym Saloon that you made possible through through the matching gift program." Language like that. So you definitely want the person who's getting soft credited. You want the record. You want to know at the end of the year how much Al brought us, both through his own gifts and through the soft credits through the gym. But you also want your thank you letters to him to only be giving him tax deductions for the gifts that were actually from him. And the other thing, that I like to do as a demonstration of in-kind gifts here, or in-kind gifts of soft credits, is to do one with a United Way contribution. So, for instance, got a check today for $270 from the United Way of the Black Hills. Well, I'll open that up, and I'm going to enter the gift as a new donation. So the amount of the gift is the amount of the check. It was $270. And this is actually part of my unrestricted, it's all part of my annual campaign. I may not have an appeal for that, or I'm not sure. You might want your own appeal for Yard Way campaigns. Well, yeah, actually, Alan, he did give 500 too, but that's just, I was doing it as a demonstration today. I hadn't backloaded his previous gift. So the $500 that showed up today was the soft credit for the company's gift. What I want to demonstrate here is that the documentation that comes from the United Way tells me that this gift is from 3 different people. One of them is E.B. Farnham. E.B. Farnham gave them $100, and Joni Stubbs gave them $100, and Cy Tolliver gave them $100. These amounts over here do not have to total up the amount of the check. For your accounting purposes, you got a $270 check from the United Way. But you also happen to know that these 3 people gave to you through the United Way, and probably have the expectation of being treated as $100 donors. Well, all your $100 donors get their name in the annual report, and you don't want to not list these people based on the fact that they made their gift through the United Way, and the United Way charged its overhead fee. So just like if they had made this gift by a credit card, you're actually only receiving $97.75. Same thing here. You want to be able to use the soft credit function to give yourself a report later that says between the cash that E.B. Farnham gave us outright and the money that he gave us through the United Way, and separately through the matching gifts from his employer, the Grand Central Hotel, we want to treat him like a $1,000 donor, even though only 300 or 400 of that actually came from him. Really quick, let's do a gift of stock. So a gift of stock is treated just like any other outright donation. Let's see that the widow Elma Garrett made a gift today. It's a donation. However, we may not know really until tomorrow what we're going to end up having as the final amount here. Because what we're going to do with this is we're going to go ahead and say that this is this is part of our capital campaign. It's a result of a personal solicitation. But what she's going to give us, now, under method, we've only got the 5 things here. It's a room thing. I think at some point I'm sure we'll probably add a second row here with some additional buttons where stock would be one. But in the meantime, you can just use cash or check, either one. But note is what you really want to make sure you're recording here, where you would say 100 shares of the Bank of Deadwood. And here's where you need to know, and you won't know this until tomorrow, what it traded at, high and low. $105 and a low of 97. So from a standpoint of what you're required to give Alma is an acknowledgement that that says the value of the stock on the day that you gave it was the average of the high and the low, 100 shares that averaged $101. So that means this gift is worth $10,100. Now that's that's what is expected of you. That's what the IRS is going to want to see. You can make your own rules up in terms of how you go for donor recognition. Lots of people try to make stock gifts. They're watching their stock gifts. They want to get that $100,000 level. They're seeing how high it got. They made the gift. If their intention was to be a $100,000 donor, but by the end of the day, the amount has slipped back down, and it was only actually worth $99,950. Unfortunately, that's what they get as the tax credit, but it doesn't mean that you don't list them as a $100,000 donor in your annual report. It doesn't mean that you say, well, that was a naming gift for this, for this classroom, but unfortunately, that's not enough. So write us another check to make up the difference. You don't want to do that. But this is that's the process that we've got now. I don't have a timeline for that, Judith. We actually recommend, for your previous question, we recommend using having your donor advised funds being their own separate organizational constituent within Bloomerang, and then soft crediting the board member who made the gift through that. It's for the same reason. Board members who put money into a donor-advised fund at the community foundation, they got their tax deduction maybe 3, 5, 7 years ago when they put the money in there, and so you want to thank them for making the gift possible. Let them know that you received the gift, but it's got to be different language. That's our recommendation. Not everybody, but I know that some organizations have different ways of going about it, and we are kind of getting into the area here where if you've got a CPA or an attorney on your board that has reasons maybe specific to local law for doing it a different way, it certainly I'm not in a position to overwrite that person. Well, actually, Judith, that's a good question. You could do both. As we demonstrated with the United Way example, you could soft credit both the individual and the community foundation, because the totals don't have to, you can have multiple soft credits on the same gift, and the totals of those soft credits don't have to be exactly the same number as the totals on the, as the amount of the check itself. I don't know that I've seen that done, but it certainly could be done. Last thing I wanted to cover, and we are right at 2:30, but I apologize again for losing a little bit of time with losing internet connection. But I do want to talk a little bit about planned gifts. Here's where I recommend that you create an additional custom constituent setting. In fact, I even think it's a good idea to even maybe have a whole separate category for this information. And I've got all kinds of categories in my database here. I'm going to scroll down. One of the cool things about Bloomerang, if you want to have all these different types, types of information, is that you can drag and drop your custom fields into any different order. So if you were going to want, maybe, I'm going to go ahead and move this up higher on my list for today. And then I'm going to say, let's open up Cytoliver again. Because he wasn't doing too well last we saw him. We can go to his profile and edit his profile. So down here under all the general information, we've created this custom field for planned gift donor, where we can say that he's told us we're in his will, or he's told us we're a charitable remainder trust. Maybe both. Then in future planning, you got the ability. Now, I always believe, when you are generating your mailing lists, particularly for like your invitations to your annual meeting or who you're going to send your annual report to, you're probably going to filter that mailing so you're not sending to every single person in your database. Maybe you're only sending it to people who are current donors. But if somebody is a planned gift donor, if you're in somebody's will, you definitely don't want to exclude that from that mailing. And so here'd be a situation where if you were doing a report prior to using that report as a mailing list, if I wanted to see a list of all of my constituents, I want constituents who have transactions, have any specific transactions where the date is, so maybe I want to say during the previous 730 days, 2 years. And so I'm down to 102 constituents for this, but I also want, or constituents where planned gift vehicle is anything, any of the above. So now I've gone from 102 to 103, and I didn't lose Cytoliver. I just think it's important that you have that, that you have that record in there. What I also like to do, and here's another thing that I'm sure is in the works. But in the meantime, what I recommend, having a bypass for this or a workaround for this. We have. Let's go back to Cy's record. If Cy was deceased, we go to his record. We go to his profile tab. Nope. We would edit his profile tab, and at the very top field would change his status from active to deceased. And as soon as we did that, you're going to have a flag at the top of his record. I think that one of the things that we're doing that's in the works, I don't know the timetable, is giving you the opportunity to add additional things that show up as flags. I, for instance, would love to see widow or widower always show up flagged, so I knew when I was looking somebody if that was the case. And similar, I would always want planned gift donor to be flagged. But while that process is in development, In the meantime, what I like to do with my planned gift donors is I like to create a timeline note for them. New note. And I always want this note to be the very top thing on their record. So to make sure that happens, I cheat. And I give it a date 100 years in the future. And that note is planned gift donor. And I might even want to on 6/20/2019. In fact, you can go over here to attachments and attach a scanned version of that letter, and then you've got it. And when we save this, what we've got here is on size record. Top thing we're always going to see, planned gift donor in all capital letters, is always going to be the top thing on his timeline. And that's, up until such time as we're able to get a flag up here for planned gift donor. That allows me at least to know. I mean, obviously, I want to be able to run reports so that I am including my planned gift donors in my mailings, and I also just want to be, when I'm looking them up individually, I want to be able to see on their front page. And with that, we've concluded what I hope to cover today. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you soon at another version.